Okay, so in this video we're going to look at PST2, which is moving off and stopping. And specifically we're going to look at the way that you would recap it and the way that you would set the objectives. It's worth mentioning though that you will be driving to the site on this one, and on the way to the site you will be demonstrating the use of mirrors, because this will be the first time really when the pupil is going to practically use the mirrors. They might have been told a bit about them in the cockpit drill, but this is the first time when they're going to actually be using them. So a demonstration of your use of mirrors on the way will be quite useful to get them to understand when you're using the mirrors and how you're using them, as in pairs, interior to exterior, and why you're using them and what you're looking for. Try to incorporate a little bit of small talk into that commentary, if you like, so that you're not just talking about your mirrors, but getting to know the pupil a little bit, because remember, it isn't your pupil, you didn't see them last time, it's a new pupil to you, so it's valid to try and find out things like the motivations to want to learn to drive, and a little bit about the pupil themselves to break the ice. So once you get to the site, this is where we can perhaps come into the recap side of it. The pupil will have done cockpit drill and controls before, so there are certain things that they should know. And when you're recapping, you need to make sure that you're asking questions that you think are achievable, that you think the pupil should know, and that they should be able to get right. If you're asking a question that the pupil has no chance of getting right, then you're going to stall at the first hurdle really, because you're going to try and find out something that they don't know. When they don't answer the question correctly, they feel a bit uncomfortable, you feel uncomfortable, you've then got to give them the answer. And when you ask another question, they're not really going to want to answer questions because they keep getting them wrong. So make the question really achievable, really simple, and make it relevant to that particular lesson. So in this case, we've got them to the site, you're in the driver's seat, they're in the passenger seat, but the next thing you need them to do is to swap around and come into the driver's seat. So last week when they did cockpit drill and controls, they should have been told that before opening the door they would look to make sure it was safe to do that, and they should have been told which way to walk around the car to get into the driver's seat. So they're two questions that you might turn into recap questions and say to the pupil, okay, so before you open the door, where do you need to look, why do you look, what are you looking for, that kind of thing, and which way you're going to walk around the car and why do we do that. Now they should know the answer, so they should give you the right answer to that, which then gives you a chance to give positive feedback and praise. So everything works in your favour. Once you've got them in the driver's seat, then you really need to go through a recap of the cockpit drill. So I'd make that the first thing that you do, get them set up in the seat before you go on to do the briefing. So again, it's stuff that they should know. They should know about DSSM. So if you target your questions towards those parts of the cockpit drill, then the answer should come. And when you get the right answer, again, you can give positive feedback. So you might say something like, what was the first thing you do in your cockpit drill? What does D stand for in DSSM? That kind of thing. So give them a bit of a clue, and they should say doors, and then you could say, well, how do you check that the doors are shut properly? And then they'll give you the answer, hopefully, that you're looking for. If at any point you don't get the right answer, because sometimes they'll give you a wrong answer, then you should hear that. That's part of your fault identification process. So if you hear a wrong answer, then address it, get them back on track, maybe by asking another question, maybe just by telling them what they need to know. But it's part of your job to listen to the answer and not just assume that it's going to be the right answer, but making sure that it is before you move on to the next prompted or recap question in this case. So we've done the doors, they've given the right answer, give some feedback and said well done for that, and then we can move on to the seat. So you might say, for example, how would you adjust your seat? So let's take the leg reach of the seat, and they might say, oh, move my seat further forwards. Well, that doesn't really tell you that they understand how to judge whether the seat's in the right position. So you then say, and how do you tell that you've got the correct leg reach? And the answer you're looking for is that they should be able to put the clutch all the way down to the floor without overstretching. And they should show you that so that you can see that that is the case. Whenever you ask a question, if you always know what answer you're looking for, then if you get the wrong answer, you'll hear that. If you get the right answer, you'll hear that as well. But try not to ask a question that you don't really know what the answer should be. So ask a really targeted question specific to what it is you're trying to find out, and that'll make it easier for you and easier for the pupil to get the question correct, get the answer correct. Once they've given you the right answer and they've shown that they've done it correctly, then you can give you positive feedback again. So everything goes well. So there's seat, steering. You might ask how do they check the reach of the steering is correct and what would they alter if it wasn't correct. The seat belt, how do they put that on? And then mirrors. So when you get onto the mirrors, we were talking about how they would adjust the mirrors, what they should be able to see, and you can ask them what can you see in the mirrors, and then they should give you an idea of what they can see, which should sound correct. Watch out for things like that. They're not moving their head to actually adjust the mirror, but they are sitting in the correct position in the seat, so that when they're driving along they're not going to have to dip the head and move to look in the mirror. So you are looking for faults at this stage, but this is all part of your recap. So really that should be quite a quick process, getting through the recap and moving then on to your objective. So once you've got the cockpit drill done, you might ask a few questions about the foot controls. You might say which foot would you use to operate the accelerator and the brake, and which foot for the clutch. Maybe just a couple of brief questions about what they do. How would they select first gear, and you can get them to show that. So they're all relevant to the controls that they're going to be using for moving off and stopping. But try not to go on too long with all of that, because that's just going to waste your time for your briefing and the practical exercise. Because don't forget, you've driven to the site, which has taken a little bit of time, and then you've had to go through this process of a recap. So try and keep it short but precise to whatever it is you want to find out. And hopefully, if you've asked the right questions and you get the right answers, you can move on, you can give positive feedback, and everything goes well. So once you've done the recap, you'd need to set the objective for this particular lesson. So the objective, if you've got a link from the recap into the objective in a sense, that's going to be really good. So you could say something like, well, that's really good that you've remembered your cockpit drill so well. So today I'm going to teach you about moving off and stopping. I'm going to explain it to you first and show you a diagram so that you can see it in theory, and then you're going to practice it. But don't worry, because I'm going to give you plenty of help at the beginning, and as the lesson goes on I should be giving you less help, so that by the end of the lesson you'll have a better practical ability and a better understanding of how to move off and stop correctly. So there's your objective for that lesson. You've said what you're going to teach at the beginning, how you're going to teach it with the EDP, explain, diagram, practice, and then by the end what they should have achieved. And try and make the end achievement achievable, so you're not saying to them, right, by the end of the lesson you'll be able to do this on your own completely, because that probably isn't achievable. But if you're saying you're going to do it with less help, if the only thing that they're doing with less help is checking the blind spot or preparing the car, you know, it could be just one or two things. If that's the only thing, they're doing it with less help at the end, so you've achieved that objective. So usually you will have achieved a much better objective than that. You will have got them to do a lot more at a prompted level, maybe not independently, but you'd move from guided to prompted, which again is a progression, so they are doing it with less help. So make the objectives achievable, make it targeted as to whatever you want to do, and relevant to that lesson. So obviously the lesson has been chosen for you, which is moving off and stopping, so that is what you would be teaching. So hopefully you can see there the way that you might ask some recapping questions for this particular subject, and the way that you can link that then into the objective and keep the flow going through the lesson. Once you've done the objective, you would then move on to the briefing, and there is a video on the briefing for moving off and stopping if you'd like to look at that. And I will be doing some practical in-car videos, so that you might be able to see how the pupil and the instructor might react together and work together during this particular lesson on the move. So look out for that one in future. I hope that's helped you. See you soon.